What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video. I apologize, my voice is a little bit hoarse this morning, but I wanted to cover the awesome mint on cards and loose graded and ungraded mint on cards that sold in the Hakes auctions May session. They just closed last night as of the filming of this video, and for the most part, I would say the prices were flat or down. There were some exceptions, as we'll cover, but I think in general, it was kind of what I expected in general, that the prices were down. So, I think that now's a really good time to be picking up some of these more desirable mint on cards that you oftentimes only find at Hakes. And I wanted to dig into all the information. Just keep in mind that the prices I'm quoting in this video include the 18% buyer's premium that Hakes charges to winning bidders. So whatever you bid, add 18% on that. For some states, you also have to pay sales tax as well as shipping and packing fees, which are not inexpensive. So just keep all that in mind as we go through the prices. The first one is an AFA 75 vinyl Cape Jawa mint on card, 12-back A, unpunched, no price sticker. But if you look at the vinyl Cape Jawa inside the blister, it did have staining on the cape, and that really held the price down quite a bit. There was one that was an AFA 80 that sold in June of last year over at Hakes, an AFA 80 that sold for $40,000 after the buyer's premium. So this was a pretty significant discount. I was still expecting it to go higher than $11,500, which is where this one closed at. The value code was $10,000 to $20,000, which was the estimate that Hakes had for this item. I was expecting closer to 15, but I think that the staining on the cape really turned off some of the big whales that like to buy these items and are maybe a little more picky, and that really held the price down. But relative to the one that sold in June of last year, that was an AFA 80 with no staining on the cape that sold for $40,000, this was a pretty good value buy. Next up was a 12-back B C3PO. This was a punched example with no price sticker, graded AFA 85, straight 85s for the subscores. The value code on this one was $2,000 to $5,000. I was thinking it was probably going to be towards the lower end of this range, maybe $2,500, but even that one came in low. $1,882 took that one home. And to me, that was a pretty good buy as well. I mean, we're talking about items that most of us are not going to spend the money on, at least for me. I don't have $1,800 lying around usually, unless I sell a lot of stuff. But that was a beautiful 12-back B with straight 85s, and even that, those having all those low high sub scores of 85s, it was a punched example, admittedly, but that still came in well below where I expected. Next up was a 12-back B Stormtrooper. This was an unpunched example with no price sticker with straight 80s for the subscores. And again, the value code was $1,000 to $2,000. The winning bid was $1,146. And that's going to be kind of the running theme for most of the items that we cover here, is that they're going to come in towards the lower end of the price estimate by Hakes, if not below the low estimate. But this one sold again for $1,146. Next up was a 20-back A Sand People, unpunched example, 80, 80, 85 were the subscores. The value code of $700 to $1,000, I thought, I seem to remember saying that during the preview video for this auction lot, that I thought that was too low, but Hakes ended up being right. It was towards the upper end of that, $973 for a beautiful 20-back AFA 80. That to me is a great buy, and I would argue that if this was at auction on eBay, it would probably go a little bit higher than that. So a little bit surprising that one came in as low as it did. Next up was the rectangle card Meccano 20-back. So this is the Jawa. Now it was a yellowed blister, so keep that in mind. It was an AFA 80 example, 80, 80, 85 were the subscores. And I did say, during the preview video that I thought that the $1,000 to $2,000 price estimate from Hakes was too high, and I was right on that one. The final winning bid was $726, which I think that's probably about right. For reference point, I have an uncirculated 80 with a clear blister that I purchased probably about a year and a half ago, if not longer. And I paid closer to $900. So I think given that it's a yellowed blister, this is probably about right and probably in line with market. and kind of more in keeping with where I expected this one to sell versus what Hakes estimated that one would sell for. Here's another one that was a little bit of a shocker. This was the 21 back B Boba Fett AFA 75. Now, it did have a pretty ugly Toys R Us price sticker, unfortunately, on the front of the card there. It was also a punched example with some sticker residue on the Star Wars label. So, by no means perfect, but it is a mint on card 21 back Boba Fett. AFA 75 with two very high subgrades of 80 and 85. And the value code of $5,000 to $10,000, to me, I actually thought that might have been a little bit low. AFA 80s and 85s can set you back, over $10,000 pretty easily, closer to $15,000 to $18,000 based on sales that I saw last year, even on Facebook. I do remember one on Facebook that was ungraded that sold for closer to $15,000 on Facebook last year. This one sold for $5,192, and that's after the buyer's premium. So that is an absolute bargain. And again, I know it's not a perfect example with the sticker residue and the fact that it had that Toys R Us price sticker. So that probably were those were probably the main culprits as to why this stayed down. But $5,192 is a bargain. I mean, worst case scenario, I was expecting kind of $7,500 to $8,000. And for an AFA 75 21 back for $5,000, that is just, it's pretty unbelievable that it sold that low, in my opinion. Next up was an older case style for the blue snags, loose graded AFA 80. The value code was $700 to $1,000, and even this one came in low. This one came in at $655, and we've seen prices on eBay that were higher than this, that have been higher than this before the applicable sales taxes. So, again, is it an expensive, rare item? No. We see blue snags all the time pop up on eBay, both graded and ungraded. So $655, while not, a steal by any means, $655 is a pretty good value in my mind for that one. Next up was a 12-inch Boba Fett boxed, and I'm assuming that this one is not mint and seal box. It says it's missing the small plastic ring on the end of the string. The box has been opened at the top. The flap has not been folded over. But this one actually, I think, I've seen a couple of examples that were unused contents that sold on eBay for about this same price. And given that this one was not complete, I'm a little surprised it came in where it did at $986. Although the fact that the flap had not been folded over, I think that's a big plus on this one. So you're getting a box that's in really pristine condition, and you could probably replace that missing hook that it talks about in the item description pretty easily, and have this to be kind of like a nice near mint plus example. But again, the value code was $1,000 to $2,000. It came in right at $986.47, so towards the lower end of the price range that was estimated. I think most of the die cast, I thought the die cast mint on card were all really good deals. This one is the 12 back for the Landspeeder die cast, and the blister looked to be in great shape. The card was in really good shape overall. Just some light edge wear around the hang tab there, but a pretty pristine example for the most part. And that one sold for $285. So I'm just trying to cover a lot of different price ranges in this Hakes auction. And, just anecdotally speaking to some of my friends and collectors who picked up items in this auction, as I've talked about, the ungraded mint on cards went for a song and a dance is what the kind of general consensus seems to be. And I don't think this was by any means a steal of a deal, but at $285, I knew that was probably too low of a value code at $100 to $200, but $285 seems to be pretty good. The two TIE Fighter die cast that sold, I thought, were both great deals. This one is the 12 back with a clear blister, and that one sold for $173. Very light wear. They gave it a very good score overall, so probably like a 75 grade. But 173, that's a great buy for a blister that was in great shape. And then there was also an Empire Strikes Back Imperial TIE Fighter die cast with a price sticker. It did say it had heavy overall aging and wear, and it was listed as card displays good. So when I say, when Hake says card displays good, you're probably talking 70 to 75 grade. But this is the harder to find Empire Strikes Back card. I just find in general that the die cast on the Empire Strikes Back packaging are much more difficult to find. And this one obviously went for more money despite maybe being in worse condition than the 12 back, but that still sold for $232 after the buyer's premium. That's a pretty good buy there. Here was one that it's on my want list, but the timing was not right for me. And I thought this was a pretty good buy. This was a clear blister debut card for Han Solo in his Hoth outfit, the 31 back A, graded AFA 80, 80, 80, 85 were the subscores, no price sticker, and punched. So this is kind of exactly in my wheelhouse. This is kind of what I'm looking for my 31 back A debut Han Solo Hoth. This is kind of what I'd like to get because it's not perfect, but it's still very high grade, and it's also a punched example, which helps keep the price down. And that's the case with this one. This one sold for $778, so right at the lower end of the value code and probably right where I expected it to sell, maybe even a little bit low. So I think that was a really good value buy there. Next up was a yellowed blister 77 back A Luke Skywalker in his Hoth gear. It was an unpunched example, but it did have a KB Toys price sticker. 80, 85, 75 were the subscores on this one. So very late to very slight moderate yellowing to the blister. That one sold for $361. That is a bargain buy, in my opinion, if you can live with a yellowed blister. Tough to find those U.S. release Return of the Jedi's 77 backs, especially with a clear blister. I don't know if I've even ever seen a clear blister 77 back Luke Hoth before, but that was a good buy at $361. Really good value. Next up, another steal of a deal on a mint on card Boba Fett. This was an AFA yellowed 75 for Boba Fett, and this one was the 77 back A. But the value code was $2,000 to $5,000. I was expecting kind of $2,300-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. It sold for $1,571. $1,571. We see prices that are higher than that on eBay for ungraded examples. And to get an AFA 75, 77 back Boba Fett for $1,571, wow, that is a bargain. So both of the Boba Fetts that I'm featuring in this video, both the 21 back as well as this 77 back A, they sold for well below what I expected to be market value. Some tri-logos. This was a 75 plus grade Han Solo Bespin. It also had the KB Toys sticker, and it was a punched example. That sold for $486. Another really good price there because it's tough to find the Han Bespin on a tri-logo. It's not like a grail by any means, but in general, it's not one you see pop up that regularly. And, fairly high grade. Again, most of the whales are looking for 80s or usually 85. So that, maybe they kind of glossed over this one and moved on to something else. But a 75 plus grade tri-logo for $486. We had the 75 grade tri-logo Leia in her combat poncho. That sold for $584. I think that was another pretty fair value. The $200 to $400 value code I knew was way too low. They go for more than that ungraded, but $584, I think that was a really good buy there. Next up was an ungraded Admiral Akbar. It did have very slight yellowing to the blister, and it doesn't mention that in the item description, but if you look at the photos there, you can see some light yellowing at the top there and on the right-hand side. So that also held the price down. But Admiral Akbar, of the ones we've looked at so far on the tri-logo card back, Akbar is a very tough one to find. You might see a handful of those come up every year. And the value code of $100 to $200 was way too low, but $334 I think is still a pretty fair value, probably in 75 grade condition. Next up is a Luke Skywalker in his X-Wing pilot, and I thought this was a fantastic purchase. Really, really good value here. It was ungraded. It's probably like in 75 grade condition. Mainly the main culprit being the blister at the top there. It had some wear there. This was the etch style blister with the little kind of divots on each side there. But the card back was in fantastic shape, clear blister, and it sold for $298. $298. That is a bargain. We just talked about Jeff's Collectible Empire on eBay. Now, admittedly, that was a PvP figure inside the blister on that one, but that sold for almost double that price. So $298 for that. That's a steal of a deal, in my opinion. Next up is that CAS graded Imperial Shuttle mint in sealed box. The grade on that was a 75. So again, that held the price down, but $12.85 for that, I thought was a really good buy. Ungraded mint in sealed box Imperial shuttles will set you back, $1,800 or more. I've seen as high as $2,500 recently for an ungraded example. So to get a CAS 75 for $1,285, that is just a, I mean, I cannot believe it sold that low. That is a bargain of a deal. What else do we got here? Next up, this was another really good buy relative to some of the prices we've seen even on eBay. This was an AFA 85 Luke Skywalker Stormtrooper disguise on the Power of the Force card. It was a punched example with moderate yellowing, as you'd expect, but that sold for $1,622. There was one at Hakes that was the same grade. It might have been an unpunched example, to be fair, but that one sold for closer to $2,800. So this is a big discount, from auctions just dating back to last year. So there was another one of these that was an AFA 80 that sold for right around this same price on eBay. So a higher grade, and it sold for less. So $1,622 was another bargain deal. And then another Power of the Force card. This was an AFA 80 Plus EV99 with moderate yellowing, and it was unpunched with no price sticker. That one sold for $897, so that came in below the value code of $1,000 to $2,000. So, to me, it's just a sign that the market is slowing. A lot of these items just came in well below what we're used to at Hakes, and for those of you that were able to kind of bid up on some of these and nail some very common mint on cards, I think you did well. Next up was Tig From. This was an ungraded example that was in near mint condition, unpunched, and a clear blister, as you'd expect for these Lily Letty made in Mexico. The droids figures for Tig From and Sice From were made in Mexico, so they tend to stay clear. But these are very, very pricey, and even on eBay, I found one that sold recently in similar condition that sold for $1,200. This one sold for $837. So, loose Tig Froms can set you back $500 to $600 pretty easily, or loose graded $700 to $800, $900 even. So to get that one mint on card for $837, it was well above the value code of $400 to $700, but I thought that value code was way too low. But I think that was another really good buy. I think this one is probably the only exception I can come up with for the most part in this lot that I just picked a random assortment. The Sice From, this one sold for $14.75 after the buyer's premium. It did have a KB Toy sticker, but it was unpunched with a clear blister. And we all talk about how Sice From has really jumped in price, but the value code of $700 to $1,000, again, I knew that one was way too low, but still $14.75 I think was, I would say that's kind of in line with the market. I wouldn't say that was a steal by any means, but we have seen some graded examples that have approached $2,000. So I think that was a pretty good buy. Here is the back of the card back here. It looks like it's got a hole punch right there. So that might have been why it held it down just a little bit. But still, for a mint on card Sice From at $14.75, that still came in a little bit low, but I think that the hole punch was probably the main culprit on that one. So anyway, I think my general takeaway is that the market is softening, even for very desirable items like the mint on card Boba Fett's and the vinyl cape Jawa, admittedly with a stain on the cape. So we'll see what the market does from here, but I think that if you have money to spend, now's probably as good a time as any to be adding to your collection, especially for ungraded mint on cards over at Hakes, because there were a lot of good deals. I did not show some of the items that sold that were like $100, $200, $300 that normally go for, closer to double those prices. So lots of good values out there. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.